Okay. I see some participants joining. Welcome and thank you for joining Versasec and Gluu's FIDO2 and PKI Combined Security Solution webinar. We're going to wait just another minute or so to see if we have a few more registrants joining us. Okay. Give it just one more minute and then we'll begin. Okay, I think we'll get started now. Again, welcome and thank you for joining Versasec and Gluu's FIDO2 and PKI Combined Security Solution webinar. This 30-minute WebEx will begin with a brief introduction of Gluu and Versasec, leading into the presentation, which includes a video demonstration of the Versasec VSec CMS integration with Gluu Casa. And then it'll be followed by a brief panelist discussion and then the question and answer portion. Let me introduce you to our hosts. Davin Cook, he leads the business development strategy for Gluu. His experience spans over 20 years in IT software security sales and partner development. And John Hassan, the technical leader at Versasec. He brings nearly 2 decades of experience in successfully implementing strategic IT initiatives that improve business processes and productivity. His specialties include identity and access management, cryptography, certificates, PKI, HSMS, and user credentials. Okay, so the key discussion points that Davin and John will present, what is hardware-based PKI and how can it complement FIDO2? Which challenges does FIDO2 address? What are the benefits of combining FIDO2 and PKI? And the PKI plus FIDO2 use cases. During this time, feel free to post your questions in chat and we'll answer these during the Q&A portion at the end. And without further ado, I present Davin and John. Davin, if you'd like to kick us off.
Thanks so much, Vi. I appreciate that. Get a little bit of a chance here to introduce our company. So I'm Davin. I'm the business development director here. And just a little bit of background, if you haven't heard of Gluu already, Gluu's been around for 13 years. We are an open source identity access management company, and we seek and source the very best development talent out there to help us advance our code to create the best IAM platform in the world. We have about 35 contributors, active people on staff around the world. And we currently service over 50 enterprise and government, healthcare, and military clients. We have over 3,000 deployments a year. People download Gluu and use it for experimenting with, as well as developing on, as well as putting into production. And we service all of those through over 20 global services partners that we also call friends around the world. So I'm very happy to have Versasec with us today. Versasec and Gluu have been working together on this exciting application that John will be presenting for us today.
Thanks, Davin, and thanks, Via. So as Versasec is an IT security software company, which was founded in Stockholm, Sweden in 2007. And our mission from the start has always been to help organizations manage their digital identities. And we do this by delivering a system for managing two-factor authentication devices that enable really our customers to increase their security level by using the strong authentication methods. Versasec continues to develop and sell our identity and access management systems to enterprise and government organizations around the globe. Since then, we've steadily expanded our global presence. Of course, starting off in Sweden and adding offices in Europe, the US, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East. Our application, which is known as Versasec CMS, really empowers businesses to protect their own systems by really providing the state-of-the-art and highly secure identity management. This ensures the device is properly set up for each user. It's maintained throughout its life cycle. It's correctly deactivated when appropriate, and all the other systems that are connected to it are informed of their current state and any status changes. And the effects really of combining these two-factor authentication devices with the PKI or FIDO technologies really enable the uses to those consuming applications which demand the highest level of security, and not only for fine-grained access, but also for traceability, audit, and non-repudiation. Further, creating this user-based segmentation also promotes the zero trust principle, which Versasec CMS application allows for by providing integration to these components. And I thank you for having us today on this webinar together with the Gluu.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. Yes, so we wanted to provide a little bit of background on what FIDO is, and John will go in and talk a little bit about what PKI certificate-based access are. But just to remind everybody on the call, FIDO is an alliance and its authentication standard. It was a group of companies originally started about 10 years ago to develop a standard to be phishing resistant for web-based, browser-based authentication. Starting first with a universal two-factor, it advanced to the FIDO, Fast Identity Online standard. And now a new FIDO2 standard has come out, which combines W3C standards as well as standards coming from major manufacturers like Apple, Microsoft, and Google. So essentially, FIDO allows you to take a token. Today, these are often in YubiKey or FIDO key or other branded USB keys, and present those to your computer. Either press a button or present the key and allow you to log in. So they're widely supported throughout our industry, and there are a lot of applications for FIDO-based authentication. Its goal is really to be again, as phishing resistant and to reduce our reliance on passwords. And we're now seeing new adoption of FIDO in IoT or non-human based authentication as well. John, any comments on this?
Absolutely, thank you. Well, I'll jump into the PKI. So PKI is the abbreviation for the public key infrastructure, and the classic definition that's heard there is really it enables the security and private exchange of the data through the use of a public and private cryptographic key pair. This pair is then obtained and shared through a trusted certificate authority. And PKI has been widely deployed and used to authenticate identity, of course, provide access management, encrypt documents and data, encrypt end-to-end communication over insecure networks. Again, it relies on the services of a trusted certificate authority to create, distribute, and manage the lifecycle of these cryptographic keys through the digital certificates. It's very well established, and it's been around for a very long time. It benefits businesses in many ways. It allows businesses to authenticate users, machines, and those interactions. So you can think of it really as the PKI as the helping hand and the facilitator. The helping hand is there for anything and everything, and it's there no matter what it's asked of it to do. So these benefits, along with the need to secure access to cloud-based instances and IoT devices that Davin mentioned, have expanded the use of the digital certificates, and but have also made managing PKI structures a complex process at times. If we go to FIDO, is a decentralized authentication technology where the trust is established individually between a system or relying party and a user. And in contrast, the PKI serves as a central trust provider to the organization. It really puts the organization into the position to broker the trust between the users and the system. So you really want to automate the PKI and remove the complexity from the technology. And this really positions it as a perfect complement to FIDO2. And I think utilizing both these technologies, you assure there's no gaps left in the security perimeter. Mobile and cloud-based authentication, it's made simple for users with FIDO2, and those devices and emails and document interactions are verified with PKI.
Exactly. I think John raises some good points. We thought it was important to perhaps list some of the use cases where you might use FIDO and where you might use PKI. So essentially, as a rule of thumb, you should have at least the same assurance level as the technology you're enabling or protecting. So if you're digitally signing a document or encrypting a message, perhaps you want to rely on certificate-based authorization to be able to do that, or to step up to certificate-based authentication. So a typical use case would be to log into the application using your FIDO2 key, and then when asked to digitally sign a message, you would use your certificate to do that. So again, for email encryption and signing, perhaps FIDO would not be sufficient. For TLS or for VPN access, especially in controlled computing environments, perhaps FIDO would not be sufficient for that. And certainly for disk encryption and de-encryption, I would suggest that FIDO2 may not be. Again, FIDO is meant to be a user-friendly solution that allows multi-factor authentication. And although it's inherently secure, does not provide that extra level of assurity that certificate-based authentication can. And especially in federal computing environments where you need to meet AAL level 3 or federal assurance level 3 based authentication, you would want to rely on a certificate-based authority. Any comments on that, John?
Yeah, thanks for that comparison. Absolutely. I mean, there have been a significant increase in the phishing attacks in the last year, where hackers frequently impersonate the coworker and target them to share the private information via email. So, as you mentioned, this can be prevented with the secure email interactions, such as the email signing encryption, which is not part of the FIDO2 specification. As our interactions become increasingly digital, those documents in person are slowly diminishing, if not gone already.
Right.
So digitally signing documents has been essential, but also can't be done with FIDO. And you have the PKI offers that well-established, of course, method for securing the communication between the person and or between machines. I mean, there's no reason to choose between PKI and FIDO. I see them as when you combine the best of both worlds to optimally secure your systems there.
Fantastic. And I think we have a bit of a demo today, so I'll have John guide us through this. And if you just allow me a couple seconds to set this up for us. I'll try that again, apologize. And I'll back you up, John. There we go.
Sure, thank you. So here we're going to be issuing a certificate and registering a FIDO credential. We'll do a PIN unblock through our self-service application, where they set the PIN on the card, on the token or credential. It can be any type of credential there, demonstrating the classic Windows logon using certificate-based authentication. Then we go into FIDO authentication with Salesforce through the Gluu IDP, and then we'll do a little showcase on digital document signing as well.
Okay.
So this is the central application. Here, a typical administrator would issue the credential. You type in your two-factor PIN or passcode to perform the and then you'd pick up your user. We'd issue the token. This is where we register. In this part here, you're registering the FIDO credential for the user into the Gluu IDP. So when the user receives his card, it's already registered and ready to be used. And the next slide would show our self-service application. This, you do a pin unblock typically, which means you set pin initial, allows the user to set pin on the token. We're using here a secondary authentication method using the Active Directory to verify that the user is who they say they are. This is the classic Windows logon using the certificate that's already issued to the credential. So they can now use it to log into their workstations here. This is simulating a local domain and then authenticate Salesforce using the Gluu IDP. Again, we registered previously the user and published the public key into the user object into the IDP, and then this through the Gluu IDP through Casa, you're able to do single sign-on to Salesforce. So here, you would sign your document with a digital signature based on the certificate that's issued on the credential. And then, of course, according to the protocols of your public key infrastructure, your PKI. So all these use cases can be managed and deployed under a unified application in Versasec CMS application, connecting to your existing PKI, connecting to your FIDO IDP, applying different policies and things according to your requirements, right on the credential for the user. And that's our demo.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Now that we've reached the end of the presentation portion, we have a few questions for John and Davin to start the panel discussion. John, we'll start with you. What smart cards tokens support both FIDO and PKI authentication?
Okay, thank you for that question. So there are many out there. I will speak about the ones that we support within Versasec CMS currently and what we've tested. So if you look at the whole YubiKey 5 series, there's many different forms there. There's the nano version, there's the USB version and USB-C, so we support all those. The Thales 3940 dual model and the K9 FETIAN ePass credential as well, we also support. And if you have something that you'd like us to support, or we'd be happy to evaluate it with you as well. So reach out to us.
Great. Davin, this one, which authentication challenges does FIDO2 address?
Yeah, good question. So we're seeing an actually expansion of FIDO2 into consumer-based authentication, where through loyalty programs, specific users can be issued little fobs or tiny key rings that can be used as FIDO devices. But typically, FIDO2 and FIDO have been used for workforce authentication. So even a distributed workforce or an on-premise workforce. Now we're seeing, of course, a more remote-based workforce. Individuals are issued these USB keys and cards, and they are used for terminal or access to the websites, as well as authentication directly onto the machines. So it's that extra level of assurity. It provides multi-factor authentication, and of course helps organizations move towards more passwordless authentication. Microsoft and Apple and Google, the big three, as well as Azure and AWS and their cloud services are all supporting FIDO-based authentication.
Okay, and how would you enable FIDO authentication within single sign-on?
Right. So today, Azure AD, if you're using Office 365, is a form of single sign-on, although not all applications or web-based applications work freely with Azure, but in a typical Office environment, if you're using O365 or that type of a collaboration toolkit, including Google G Suite, it natively supports FIDO2 for authentication. However, if you do need to add FIDO to web-based or SaaS-based applications, you would need a centralized FIDO2 server. So obviously the Gluu server provides a very advanced implementation of that, and you would consolidate your authentication with something like Gluu to front end all of that, including Office 365, and enable the FIDO2 service and register your devices through a solution like the Versasec CMS.
Great, thanks. And John, what is the driver behind issuing and managing FIDO2 and PKI?
That's a good question. So I think organizations want to use the appropriate security, but with a good balance as well between that security and usability. And I think one of the primary driving factors still to today is weak or compromised passwords, as their primary cause of data breaches, and removing this threat is a top priority. Organizations also, I think, want to move away from using passwords altogether, and also OTPs. So PKI and FIDO both offer crypto-based authentication, which is the most secure method of a multi-factor authentication available today. And internally, an organization may wish to use PKI where many systems already have built-in PKI support, or where the use cases can lend themselves to a PKI-based solution, such as the document signing, encrypted email. But some applications that do not lend themselves easily, I think I haven't mentioned, some legacy to PKI-based authentication that are difficult, and SaaS solutions where the company is not always in control of the end application. PKI is also heavily policy-driven, with certificates being issued by a trusted authority. It's often difficult to extend these processes to maybe contractors or the supply chain, where the organization, again, not in control totally of the or at all of the onboarding processes. So in these areas, FIDO can be a good alternative.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, that ends the panelist discussion, and we are now open for questions and answers. You may add them to the Q&A section or the chat section. Meanwhile, we have a few that came in earlier for people that could not join. So I'll start with that while we wait to see if anyone else has questions. Let's see. I have FIDO only YubiKeys right now. Would I need to replace them? John?
Sure. So if you're using Versasec CMS in the very near future, you won't need to replace them, because we will be able to manage FIDO only tokens. So if you want to use FIDO only and manage those credentials, you would be able to.
Okay. And for FIDO2, do they need to replace existing infrastructures to add the PKI capabilities?
They would need to enable the PKI infrastructure, yes, in order to add the authentication side. So for CMS, they would be able to manage those credentials, but you would need an existing certificate authority to connect to, and then for authentications to happen in the backend. So they would need an existing PKI infrastructure there, yes.
Okay, so that rolls into the next question. What is the Versasec CMS role in the FIDO2 and PKI solution?
So the CMS really enables the management of the authentication of the device throughout the whole life cycle. Basically, we ensure the device is properly set up for each use. We maintain the device properly throughout its life cycle. It's correctly deactivated when it's needed. And then the systems that are connected to it, like your certificate authorities, IDP, etc., are always informed about the current state of the device and any status changes.
Okay, great. And where can someone learn more about this VSEC CMS solution?
You can go to our website, it's versasec.com, contact us directly. You can also register through our website and download our software and start installing it. We have great guides in there on how to use it, how-to guides, how to set it up. If you have an existing Microsoft CA environment, it literally takes minutes to set up and start managing your credentials. Yeah, or you can contact us and then we can work with you if you have something more specific.
Okay, and Devin, FIDO2, the consumer-centric solution, how does FIDO2 work in enterprise?
Yeah, I think we addressed that earlier. Very definitely FIDO2 is a enterprise grade multi-factor authentication solution. In fact, it's based on standards. So if you were to decide on an MFA solution, I would guide you to using FIDO2 for an MFA. But certainly we're seeing now the PC manufacturers, so Mac, certainly the Apple devices are now actually FIDO2 devices. They have and are storing the private keys within them, hardware-based authentication, so that when you touch the Touch ID or when you use your face to log in through Microsoft Face ID, that is using a FIDO-based or can use the FIDO-based authentication. So we're seeing now a cross-pollination, and I think more and more industries, cross-consumer and cross-enterprise, are recognizing the need for multi-factor. Certainly, many industries are mandated today in order to provide multi-factor authentication, just for security reasons, especially in banking and insurance. And we're seeing more and more of that trickle down to consumer authentication, where you might use MFA just to log in and buy your groceries off of Amazon. What we're trying to do here through FIDO is to reduce phishing and reduce our reliance on passwords.
Okay, great. Well, I do not see any more open questions, so I want to thank John and Davin and our audience. This is the end of the webinar, and we want to thank you for joining us. We will send a follow-up email with a link to the recording and links to Versasec and Gluu, including Davin and John's email addresses, if you have further questions or interest in Versasec, VSEC CMS integration solution with Gluu Casa. Thank you again for attending. We appreciate your time and interest in Gluu and Versasec.
Thank you.
Thank you.